New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Live from a secure concrete bunker somewhere in Ohio, New Thought Media Network presents Pastor Michael Mangus with Friday's Fireside Chat, spiritual conversation for today. Here he is from the secret radio room, surrounded by thousands of watts, Pastor Michael Mangus.
And as the thousands cheer in the background, good evening to everyone across the United States and also around the world. It is time once again for another fun-filled, real packed, and yes, guaranteed, always exciting edition of the Fireside Chat here on your New Thought Media Network. I am Reverend Michael Mangus, broadcasting this evening from the super secret concrete bunker surrounded by thousands, and I mean thousands of watts. Broadcasting to the world this evening. It's good to see you. We do have a wonderful show. We are taping a little early so that to accommodate schedules here. But please feel free to interact with us by posting your comments on Facebook and also on YouTube. And for all my shy people out there, I know you're out there. Yes, you don't comment, but you watch the show. I know that. Just send me an email, pastormichaelmangus@gmail.com. pastormichaelmangus@gmail.com. I get to start my week by reading all your wonderful emails. So pastormichaelmangus@gmail.com. So the purpose of our weekly gathering here at the Fireside Chat is for all of us to cozy up to the fire, get something warm or cool to drink, and talk about contemporary issues from a New Thought perspective. And as I keep saying week after week, I want us all to have a new thought about what is going on all around us, not only here in the U.S., but also globally. And again, you do not have to agree with me. The views and opinions expressed are my own and those of my guest. But I want us to start really thinking about the issues around us and also our part in also healing that. If you are familiar with our teaching, then you are familiar again with your own divinity. So how do we use that divine nature that you are again to heal our planet? Well, it is my pleasure this evening to have as a guest one of our regulars here at the New Thought Media Network, the Reverend Barbara Schreiner-Trudel is the spiritual leader of CSL on the Lake in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Reverend Barbara, or Reverend B, hosts not one, but two weekly shows on the network, Spirit Cafe, 12 noon Eastern on Wednesdays, and Just One You Fridays at 3 p.m. So we need to get done with this recording on time. I appreciate Reverend Barbara taking time out of her busy schedule to speak on a very important topic, and that is how to be a good ally. How can we be supportive to Native individuals, African Americans, and also the LGBTQ plus community? Reverend Barbara will be our special guest here in the second half of our program. I hope everyone had a wonderful Easter here. I was out of town last week in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to perform a wedding ceremony at a chapel, which was absolutely wonderful. And I was also able to stay for Easter Vigil service at a friend's Lutheran church. It was so nice to spend time with family and friends last weekend. And to all of my Orthodox friends, a very happy Easter this Sunday the 16th. We have a lot going on in the news. The first story here is Fort Lauderdale is underwater. Fort Lauderdale is experiencing the rainiest day in its history. On Wednesday, which officials are calling a 1 in 1,000 year rainfall event. The downpour prompted emergency rescues, forcing drivers to abandon cars, close schools, and also shut down the airport. Preliminary reports indicate that the region's recorded widespread rainfall totaled more than 1 foot, while Fort Lauderdale tallied around 26 inches in a 24-hour period, according to the National Weather Service. Hundreds of Floridians were housed in emergency shelters in Fort Lauderdale late Thursday as crews raced to clear clogged storm drains and also impassable roads. More storms could strike South Florida later today, with some flood warnings remaining in effect for at least through this morning. And Fort Lauderdale is the location that we are going to have the International New Thought Alliance Conference coming this summer. So hopefully that they'll be all dried out and ready to accept in all the New Thought people from around the world. But our prayers are with the folks in Fort Lauderdale experiencing again flooding that again just came out of the blue. Our next story is one that, again, that you have heard lots about this past week, the Louisville shooting. It's not Louisville, it's Louisville. Got to pronounce it all together, Louisville. The family of the gunman who was killed after he was fatally shot, and also he shot 5 people Monday at the old National Bank building in Louisville, Kentucky. The family plans to have his brain tested for chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I said it right. How about that? I had to practice that. Commonly known as CTE, his father told CNN on Thursday. CTE is a neurodegenerative brain disease, and it can be found mainly in people who have experienced or who have been exposed to repeated head trauma, like professional football players and professional wrestlers. The family thinks that he had 3 significant concussions during his time of playing sports in middle school and high school. The testing disclosure comes as police try to uncover a motive in the mass shooting, as more of the families hold vigils and also funerals honoring their loved ones who were killed. Witnesses say that the shooter, who was 25 years of age, he had a rifle and was live streaming the shooting. His LinkedIn profile said that he had been an intern at the bank beginning in 2018 and then graduated from the University of Alabama, where he got a bachelor's and master's degree before the end of 2020. His profile has been since taken down. The shooter had been notified that he was going to be fired from his job at the bank. A law enforcement source familiar with the investigation told CNN the gunman left behind a note for his parents and a friend indicating that he planned to carry out the shooting at his workplace, though it is unclear whether that message was found, CNN reported. "I'm weary," said Dr. Jason Smith from the University of Louisville Hospital. Smith, who had been at the hospital in the emergency ward for 15 years, said it's not unusual for his team to care for a high volume of shooting victims in Louisville, but it takes a large emotional toll on the staff. Dr. Smith said this. He said, "There's only so many times that you can walk into a room and tell someone that they're not coming home. It just breaks your heart when you hear someone scream out, 'Mommy,' or daddy. It just becomes too hard day in and day out to be able to do that. Smith said that he wasn't sure what the answer to the Louisville gun violence epidemic is, but he said that something needs to change. Dr. Smith said, I would simply ask you to do something, because doing nothing, which is what we've been doing, is not working. We have to do something because this is just getting out of hand across our city and across this great nation. So for Dr. Smith and his team, it was another day at the office. It wasn't just an isolated incident. This was routine for them. There was not a massive casualties at their emergency room. They even had an operating room opened. My prayers for peace and comfort go out to all the individuals in Louisville and also in the surrounding communities. As I've said a couple of weeks ago, the obvious element or elephant in the room here is that individuals who are mentally ill, they have access and easy access to assault type weapons. Now, what if there was a ban on those kinds of guns and weapons of war like other countries have done after they have had mass shootings like Australia, Great Britain, and also Japan? So when people are acting not in the best sense, what happens in those countries? Well, they reach for a knife or they reach for a club. They don't reach for a gun. Are all the gun deaths worth the Second Amendment interpretation that says anyone can own a gun? I was listening to a legislator this week saying that the deaths were worth it as long as we get to keep our guns. Well, I disagree with that. The intent of the Second Amendment, and you should read it, is that the reason that we carry weapons or that the government allows weaponry was for the purpose of a well-regulated militia, not that everyone had a gun in their home. Thoughts or prayers are extremely helpful. However, what is going to change here is policy and us, again, holding our politicians accountable. Talking about Florida here, rain isn't their only problem. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has signed a bill that would ban most abortions in the state after 6 weeks. The law would make Florida one of the most restrictive states in the country to obtain an abortion and follows moves by other Republican-led states to curb the procedure after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last summer. Opponents of the legislation are slamming the move, arguing that 6 weeks is before many women know that they are pregnant. Meanwhile, the Justice Department is set to take an emergency dispute over medication and also medication abortion drugs to the Supreme Court. Attorney General Merrick Garland said on Thursday, and this comes after a federal court said Wednesday, that an abortion drug can remain available, but placed restrictions on mailing the pill. The assault to women's rights continue, not only in the United States, but also around the world. When are we going to understand here that women's rights are human rights that include medical care that allows a woman to choose whether or not to carry a pregnancy to term? Now, I don't mention politics and parties too much, but some in the Republican Party continue to use this right to life issue for their own political gain. Excuse me. Is this on? I think so. Is this on, Reverend Barbara? Huh? Just nod yes. Is this on? Okay, it's on. Okay. I was just making sure here. Our children and adults are getting slaughtered. And there has been no serious discussion lately about assault weapons that are used to commit most of these crimes. And as I have said in previous broadcasts, the pro-lifers tend to be pro-birthers that do not care about providing support for single mothers and their children after they give birth. So we must all continue not only to pray, but also to raise our voices in support of women. Please, 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 please go register to vote in your country. The politicians that you put in office make a huge difference in the societal outcomes of the world. Our last story hits close to home here. And that's because that the super secret concrete bunker is located probably within like 2 or 3 miles of downtown Akron. My hometown of Akron, Ohio is currently on pins and needles. It's waiting for the local grand jury's decision whether or not to press charges against the 8 officers involved in the Jayland Walking shooting last summer. This is from our local news station, Channel 3 from Cleveland. Sources say that Akron officers who fatally shot Jayland Walker won't testify before the grand jury. Now, Ohio law allows officers, when involved in incidents like this, to testify in front of the grand jury. However, the prosecutor has chosen not to involve the officers at this time. A decision on charges is likely to come next week. The special grand jury meeting in Akron to decide whether or not charges will be filed against the 8 police officers who shot and killed Jayland Walker will not have a decision until next week, according to law enforcement sources. Channel 3 also learned on Wednesday that the final ruling will likely come on Monday or Tuesday. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost, whose office's Bureau of Criminal Investigation handled the probe of Walker's death, publicly acknowledged the jurors will be the ones who set the timeline. This is not the prosecutor's call. Yost said this is the community members' call, the grand jury. Sources also told WKYC that the 8 officers will not testify before the grand jury. Instead, members have spoken with police use of force experts under oath and will also hear from Akron Police Union attorney and other officers who were at the scene in June. In anticipation of the grand jury's final decision, downtown businesses have increased security. Chris Sedlock, who is well known around here, he's the owner of the Twisted Tomato restaurant and also the Daily Pressed coffee shop. He said that the planned protests are not what we're worried about. It's what happens after the protest at 2:00 in the morning when people are still out and they decide to loot and also to riot. Echoing Akron Police Chief Steve Milet's message from earlier this week, Yost told Channel 3 News on Wednesday that he supports residents in expressing their opinions and fighting for what they believe is right, but violence is not the answer. Yost said this, he says, when you pick up a rock to throw through a window, when you start a fire, when you hurt someone else, you've crossed a line and you become a criminal yourself. Businesses like the Twisted Tomato and also the Daily Press and also Grismer's Religious Goods Store, downtown Akron, they remain open but guarded by wooden boards. So again, it's almost like a hurricane is coming. They have put up boards and they've also put up plywood, again, to protect the windows. Sedlock says his store lost $7,000 in damages alone when protesters smashed their windows in July. Last year, I would say that we were out around 50 grand in sales just because of the rioting, he concluded. So in advance of the grand jury's review, the Walker family attorney, Bobby DiCello, who is again a very well-known civil rights attorney, on Monday, he criticized the city's response to potential protest after the grand jury's decision. DiCello said that the city is boarding up windows and bracing for violence. Why? It's because the city of Akron does not trust a significant portion of its citizens. It has decided, DiCello said, that if there is going to be violence, it will come from people who are sick and tired of a system that has ignored them and injured them for generations. City leadership doesn't understand where the anger is coming from. It doesn't want to have the conversations because deep down, it simply doesn't care what they are going through. And there has been some violence and damage downtown last summer, and police arrested around 50 people in the days following Walker's death last year. I read the other day from a reporter at the local public radio station in Akron that Akron is at the crossroads. I agree with the Walker family attorney in that we really need to start addressing the real problems in Akron, which includes racial inequalities and also a pattern of aggression that was culminated last summer, but that has been going on for years here in the Akron, Ohio area. The shooting of Jalen Walker last year started with a traffic stop because of a broken taillight. A young man was shot 46 times with over 90 rounds of ammo fired by the police. And if that wasn't enough, City Council delayed in appointing a Citizens Review Council that was voted upon by citizens last November. We have a mayoral primary coming up with 7 candidates, all of them Democratic. And they are being questioned at local debates about what are they going to do about the issues of the city. And that's why I said earlier, if you do nothing else, for goodness sakes, register and please vote. Your vote does count in putting the right leadership into office that will address the real issues. I'm glad Diego wasn't here today because he would yell at me for going 4 minutes over the news. Oh, well, that's all right. Well, welcome here. This is the Friday evening Fireside Chat here on your New Thought Media Network with Reverend Michael. And we are going to take a break in a few moments and then talk with Reverend Barba about how can we become an ally. So just to let you know that yours truly is currently parking himself at Summit CSL. For more information, go to summitcsl.org there. You will find information about our wonderful Sunday gathering online at 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 in the morning Pacific time. Grab your cup of coffee, your tea, your espresso. Please join us. We do, I believe, have one of the best services in New Thought. And this Sunday, we have gone to great expense because our speaker will be New Thought Media superstar, the Reverend Michael Mangus. With this topic, grow where you are planted. Grow where you are planted. Go to summitcsl.org for more information, how to join our Zoom call. We also have rebroadcasts of the program on our Facebook page and also on the New Thought Media Network. There is so much going on here. I was in a couple of meetings this week. So many things that we're going to roll out by summer, including a new network platform and other things that we believe that will help you in your spiritual growth. And we are lovingly asking for your support. We have the opportunities here at the New Thought Media Network. We get them daily about countries opening up, ministries coming to us asking for help, and that we're able to provide that help because of your loving donations. So if you could, please go to ntmedia.org, give a very generous one-time gift, or you can do like I do and give a monthly gift. Again, everything goes to help us, again, take this message of empowerment to each and every person on this planet. So again, if you could, go to ntmedia.com/donate, and we thank all of you for helping out. All right. Time to pay the bills. And then we'll be right back. This is a Friday evening fireside chat here on your New Thought Media Network.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org. Choice, your creative superpower. We have the power to manifest as we dedicate attention to our thoughts, but often miss opportunity to achieve the greatest good. Your superpower is waiting to be unleashed to unlock a fuller, more rewarding world for all. Join us every Thursday at noon Mountain Time for Choice, your creative superpower with Zoe DeMuro.
The views and opinions expressed by Pastor Michael Mangus are generally right. However, they are his own and do not reflect the views and opinions of New Thought Media Network, Centers for Spiritual Living, or any other person living or dead. As they say in the 12-Step Recovery Program, take what you like and leave the rest. Here again is Pastor Michael.
All right, Reverend Barbara, did I say newthoughtmedia.org? Okay, so it's ntmedia.org, ntmedia.org.
No, you said ntmedia.com.
Oh, I did. Okay. I'm sorry. I've only been on this network for 3 years. I mean, I'm still working here. Our special guest this evening is Reverend Barbara Schreiner-Trudel. She's an international speaker, minister, spiritual coach, entrepreneur, and author. And she's also the leader of the CSL on the Lake in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. She also has 2 wonderful programs here on our network, which is Spirit Cafe, that's on Wednesdays at noon, and also The Joy Show, of which they're going to be taping at 3 o'clock. So we have to be done on time.
We do.
Or who's producing your show today?
I believe Robert is.
Oh boy, I'll get yelled at if I don't get you in the studio on time. That'll be part of. I meet on Mondays with Robert. There's a reason why. We are so glad to have again Reverend Barbara with us. Good evening. Welcome to the Fireside Chat. How are you tonight?
I'm great, and I'm so glad to be here. I enjoyed being on your show the last time I was, and so happy to return.
Oh, well, good.
Yeah. And
All
some of
right.
those
Any
news
comments
stories.
about the news here?
Oh my gosh. Why are men so afraid of women? That's my question. Because I think the only reason these guys are stripping our reproductive rights and health rights and whatever else they can take away is because they fear us.
So what happens if, for example, that we completely outlaw abortion, and let's say I have threatened to get the van to
Move to
take
Canada.
women up to Canada
Absolutely.
for medical attention. Now, what's going to happen if I do that? Am I going to be
Well-
arrested for helping women?
Probably.
Yeah.
And you know what's
Go ahead.
interesting is pro-lifers that go about murdering doctors and, people who are giving abortions or are giving, reproductive health information. They'll burn down the buildings, they'll kill people doing that, but then they say you can't have an abortion, even if it's an ectopic pregnancy, which will
Yes.
kill the woman. That's okay. They don't mind if she dies. They also, if the woman is raped, well, she should still have to carry it. The trauma of rape is so massive that to force someone to carry that child that in itself is a heinous crime. So
Right.
I look at the way we treat people and I think, wow, stay in your lane. Right? Like if you have values that work for you, make them yours. Live them to your highest truth, but don't infringe them on me.
It was
That's my thought.
Yeah, it was interesting during the Trump administration that they had a conference on women's rights or on women's health care, and it was all men in the room.
Of course, yeah, because they know what's best for us, right? Makes sense.
Well, you have an ally here, and I just again I may have to go get the van. And
might
that
have to.
if that happens,
Meet you at
then
the
we're gonna
border.
go, then we'll have to. I think that what in my so well, you're a minister, you should be, pro-life. Well, I am pro-life and I am pro-woman, which gives them the right to make the decision, not me.
Yeah.
I don't have to carry that pregnancy to term.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
have
not
to do
your
that.
health. Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's not your health that's being harmed. It's not your mental health or physical health. And I think that, and even young teenage girls, a girl who is molested or whatever at 12 or 13 years old who gets pregnant, she's expected to carry that child. She's not built to carry that child yet. Her body will be damaged so much because of having to carry that pregnancy. So I think sometimes, we get out of our lane. We sit back and go, well, here's what I believe. So I'm going to stuff it down the throat of every person around me. And for me, I find that really offensive. As a New Thought minister, what I know is that the choices I make are my choice, that the way I think is my choice, and that as I choose my life, I also get to live with the consequences of my choices.
Yes.
You infringe your choices on me and tell me I have to abide by your rules, that changes the game immensely. And in that moment, I am going to probably feel powerless. And the truth is, we are powerful, creative beings, all of us.
All of us. Mm-hmm.
And we're created unique and special and beautiful, divine and human. And how anyone in their wisdom can sit back and restrict the health rights of any other human being baffles me. The whole, we were talking about allies, and I'm, a real advocate of being an ally, and it's not always an easy thing to be. And you've talked about, getting the van and being an ally for women. I think that as we come to understand our own self, and as we begin to love who we are, accept who we are, and then from there honor and respect the individuals around us, because what makes this world so beautiful is the diversity of life around us. There's so much to learn, so many things to discover, so much to know. And what I know for certain is I don't know it all.
Nobody does.
Nobody does.
No.
Nobody does. So when I look at, years ago, I thought of moving to the US to take over a ministry there. And I gotta say, in the last number of years, I am so grateful that I said, no, thank you, I'm staying here. I love to visit, but I don't want to live there at the moment.
Yeah, I would let us, and the answer also is not going to Canada, everyone. The answer, if we need to do that for our women's health care, we will. But again, that's only temporary, and then bringing them back. So, I think that our mission here, or our purpose, is to, again, to be the light in our communities, to go ahead and to care about our communities, not only in our own consciousness, but also, again, getting involved with the communities that, again, that come about. And again, I have given a very simple example of how everyone can get involved, and that is by voting. I had a discussion with a 20-something last presidential election, and she says, well, it's my right not to vote, and it's my right not to, I don't have to vote, and my husband doesn't have to vote, and I'm going, you don't understand here that as a young woman, your rights are being, as well as other people's rights, are being taken away because elections have consequences. So it would serve you as a young woman and someone who again is growing in her career to go ahead and to vote for the politicians and the people who are going to champion things that, again, are good for every one of us.
For everyone, I think, you mentioned at the beginning gun violence, and of course it's much bigger in the US than it is in Canada. We have some pretty strict laws about it. And I think that's made a difference, although we've seen lots of knife attacks and things like that. I live in the biggest city in Canada, so, we definitely get some of that. But what makes me, look at what we need to do differently is we have to look at harm. And we sometimes do harm on another person without even realizing we've done it, right? Like we'll inadvertently say something or do something that causes somebody else to feel bad. But I think what we have to be willing to do, especially as white people, is to realize that we do have privilege, and that privilege has come at a cost. Now, I may not have, deliberately harmed people because of my white privilege, but because I'm white, because I have this privilege, I also can use it for good. And so my work is about doing things that are supportive of the 2S LGBTQI plus community, that looking at what's happening with people who are transgender, looking at the people who are non-binary, and looking at the BIPOC, going, enough is enough. People are people. We all came. We all started. If we go right back to the beginning, we all came from one woman in Africa.
Yes.
So us sitting back going, your skin's darker than mine, so you're nothing. I'm sorry. Like, we really have to stop that. And I was talking to a friend on my show on Wednesday, And he was talking about a group of teenagers who were, at the subway station, and they were joking and playing around and carrying on. Teenagers do this. I remember I did a long time ago, but I did. And he stood and
Thank God they didn't have the internet when we were growing up.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh,
Go ahead.
I'd never get to be a minister for sure. But, he stood there while the police were really kind of getting on these kids. And he stood there as witness going, I'm watching what's going on, because these kids aren't doing anything wrong. They're being teenagers. Yeah, they're loud, they're laughing, they're good. They're joyful. They're having a good time. They're listening to their music. They're dancing. They're doing whatever they're doing. Let them do it and back off. I think so often, we've been taught all sorts of very odd things, and as a result begin to react in ways that are very inappropriate. I look at teenagers. I love teenagers. I think they're remarkable. And what I love the most about them is that for the most part, they're pretty fierce in what they believe and what they hold to. And they don't really put up with our crap or hiding and, playing small and all that. They're like more out there than we are. And I think that's what we need right now. Is we need our kids to stand up and be mighty. My daughter was with two of her friends who are Somali Muslims.
Okay.
On the subway in Toronto. They were 15 years old at the time. And a woman is sitting across from them. And this is in the middle of COVID. She spits on them and then starts cursing them out and wishing them dead and saying she wanted to kill them. And so when my daughter got off the subway, she made sure her friends got off with her, even though it wasn't quite their stop yet, because she knew it wasn't safe for them to stay on. And then, so I phoned transit, I phoned the mayor's office, I phoned the police department, because I wanted to report this. The police come out, of course, two young white guys, typical, really confirmed for my daughter that white cops are corrupt. That's her belief. As soon as they walked in, she was like, yeah, they're not going to listen. And they wouldn't. They just went, oh, the woman probably had a mental health thing. And, your Muslim friend, she's the one who has to report this. And I'm going, my daughter was part of the three. Why does that girl have to make the report? Why can't my daughter make? Well, no, because it wasn't directed at her. No, she's an ally. I'm an ally. And I think that's one of the things we have to keep fighting for, is that we get to be heard. Yes. That we as allies can stand up for injustice when we see it and call it out, and, call out our politicians and our police forces, and, killing Black men for driving, oh, you were driving with a broken tail light. Oh, well, that's worthy of death. Black while driving. There you go. Like, what is going on in our world that we think that the color of your skin makes you a criminal? I know a lot of white people that I would not trust as far as I could throw them.
And that it's, again, this is one of the reasons why right now, again, the city basically here in Akron is on lockdown.
Yeah.
And that, again, if you go downtown, it's almost like they're expecting some type of hurricane.
Yeah.
And that what Bobby DeCello, who is the Walker family attorney, what he says is that, again, that we need to have discussions beyond boarding up the windows. We need to start talking about, the issues that caused Jayland Walker, again, to have 90 rounds fired on him, 46 penetrating his body.
How does that even make sense?
Well, and so what the officers said, this is their story, is that they saw him with a gun. And supposedly he took a shot at him, at the officers. So when the car finally stopped and he got out of the car, there was a gun in the car, but from what I understand, it was in the back seat next to some other personal items, and that he was not armed when he got out of the car. So then the police and the mayor, and who are both white, the mayor wonders why all these citizens are in front of his house demonstrating. And I think that was one of the reasons why that he did not, or he is not running for reelection.
No kidding. Smart.
Is again, and that we have again serious problems that need to be addressed. So and then I'll be quiet for a moment. The one thing that the officers and the citizens here in Akron, what they did was they voted for a citizens review board. So the legislation said that the city council would appoint most of them, with the mayor appointing 3. All right. So they spent weeks over the deadline trying to get and panel 9 people to be on the citizens review board, and that there were no consequences spelled out in the legislation for them to do that, for them to continue this stall and delay tactic that they've done for years here in Akron. Reverend Barbara, your comments.
Well, I think one of the things that stands out for me in order to be a good ally, number one, we have to educate ourselves, right? It's not up to the BIPOC community to educate us. It's up to us to educate ourselves to what it is to be a Black person in North America right now, and other places as well. I mean, look at Ukraine. It was like neighboring countries were taking in refugees. Oh, you're Black, you stay at the war, right? Like, we're not going to take you. So there's something in the world where, there has to be a change in how we perceive each other and how we treat one another. And when I look at some of the ways that people get treated, and for me, as I was educating myself, now I pastored 2 Black churches for the better part of 11 years. Okay. 99% of the people in the congregation were Black. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that was my home. Loved it, loved them. What's interesting to me is that when I speak to my friends and congregants and talk to them about life, their life is very different from mine. I never once raised my sons to say, okay, if a police officer pulls you over, make sure your hands are visible. Don't reach for anything. Don't talk back. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Make sure, because otherwise you could be shot dead. I never had to teach my kids that. Don't walk through a white neighborhood because you're going to be thought to be, killing somebody or stealing or something. You're going to be judged as wrong and bad. And that message, I had a girlfriend, we're both in our early 60s and we're chit-chatting, and she goes, if I walk into a department store, I'm followed. And I went, why? She goes, because I'm Black, they think I'm going to steal something. Yeah. And I noticed at Walmart where they would have checkers at the door when you're leaving, right? Who would check your bags if they thought. I never once was asked to show my receipt leaving a Walmart. But I watched every person who was of color asked. Mm-hmm. So there is some very insidious things in our countries that need to change. Yes. We need to create belonging. What I love about the New Thought communities that we're a part of, the Centers for Spiritual Living, Unity, what I love about this is these are communities that, as far as I know, all of them are very welcoming of all people.
Absolutely.
And that, to me, is the way it needs to be, that we have to start creating spaces of belonging. We need to stop being afraid of each other. Most people are good. Most people are good. And if we start with that premise, when my youngest daughter was growing up, I never taught her to fear strangers. I never taught her this stranger danger crap. I said, trust your gut, trust your intuition. You will know if you're safe or not.
Right.
Trust it. And so it's like we're coming at life from this fear, and the media is just pushing it on us. The news channels are just bad, 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 and repetitive. And of course, our mind absorbs that and
Yes.
believes the world has gone to hell in a handbasket. No, it has not. Yes, it needs some reforms, but the majority of people are good. And if we start with that premise, I was walking through a park one day with my white girlfriend. Her and I are walking along chit-chatting. There's a gentleman sitting on a bench and he's reading The Godfather. And I went, great book. And he goes, oh yeah, way better than the movie. Now this is a few weeks ago. And I said, oh man, I read that when I was a teenager. And he looks at me, gives me a funny look. He goes, that came out 50 years ago. And I went, yeah. And he goes, oh, you look good. I went, I love you, man. I love you, man. You know, big black guy. And I'm saying, I love you, man. Like he and I had this great interchange. If I was operating from the fear of some of the people I know, some of the people I don't know, I would not have even talked to that man. I live in a very diverse neighborhood and I talk to everybody.
Yes.
Everybody. I know my neighbors know me. I know people, a kilometer away because I go for my walks and I talk to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason for that. I believe that we are one. I believe that we are all connected. If I hate on you, I've hated on myself. Whatever
Yes.
I put out comes back to me.
Mm-hmm.
And what we need to do is learn to love ourselves enough that we could be willing to love somebody else. Like Ricky Byers wrote that song. I love myself
so much.
No, it's another one. Skipped my brain all of a sudden. I had it, then it disappeared.
Ricky Byers was on Rockin' the Love on last Wednesday. What a wonderful one of the biggest smiles. Well, let me just interject here for just a moment. Hi, you're watching the Friday Evening Fireside Chat here on your New Thought Media Network. I am Reverend Michael, and I am joined this evening by Reverend Barbara Schreiner-Trudel, who is the spiritual leader of CSL on the Lake. And she also has a couple of programs here on the New Thought Media Network. Talk to us about the language that white people take for granted. For example, white versus black. Talk to us about how that sometimes, most of the time, that can be extremely offensive to our brothers and sisters.
Well, and we don't know what we don't know. So I'm a white woman. I was raised in a white family. I'm married to a white man. I have white children. I was raised in a predominantly white city. It's not that way anymore, but it was when I was younger. I was raised in Calgary, Alberta. And here in Toronto, we're very, very diverse. So I went to a hotel recently not recently, it was during the lockdown of COVID. And when I went in, they had a container for pens that are clean and a container for pens that are dirty. And the container for clean pens was white and the one for dirty pens was black. Mm-hmm. And I looked at that and I thought, oh my gosh, like that's so offensive. And I only know that because I've stepped in it a few times. As a minister of a black church, I said things that were inappropriate because I didn't know. Yes. Luckily, they liked me enough to go, Reverend. I remember standing at the pulpit talking about being the black sheep of the family.
Yep.
As soon as it came out of my mouth, I knew that was a big mistake. And sure enough, a member of the congregation said, Reverend, do you really think that was appropriate? And I said, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. And that just calmed her immediately because I knew I'd made a mistake. And so her and I talked for a long time. We're very, very close now. We were close then, but that was a moment of interrupt. And the thing is, don't defend when you make a mistake. Acknowledge, wow, you're right. That was offensive.
Yes.
And just stop right there. Yes, I did wrong. Wow. My apologies.
And I did wrong. And I've been corrected too. The one example that I'm thinking of is the Westerns where they had, the bad guys in the black And the white guys, they wore the black hats, and the white guys, the good guys, they wore the white.
Wore the white hats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, black is bad, white is good. That's a societal. That's the whole structure that we're built on. White is best. English is best. Christian is best. What a pile of crap. All of it. That's not true. I'll tell you, I look at some of that ebony skin and I'll tell you, there are days when I'm like, I wish I had that. Like, I just don't understand it. And then you take a look at, there's so many movies I can no longer watch. When you look at the old Westerns.
Yes.
Indians are bad. Cowboys are good.
Right.
What? And then it wasn't even Indians who played the Indians.
Right.
Right. Because we're not going to let them work. That would be bad and wrong. Like, it's, when I look at all the ways that we've created separation, and what we teach in our teaching is that there is only one thing going on. We all live, move, and have our being in this one thing. We are all connected. It's how we can know. It's like you'll be talking to somebody and they're lying to you. How do you know that? Because at the subjective level, at that universal subjective level, we are one. We're connected. We have the ability to know. And so I think it's just so important for us to start looking at our human family and realize the idea of race isn't actually real. There's only one race, and that is the human race. And when we begin to eliminate all those walls, we begin to create the possibility of a world that works for the highest and best good of all of humanity, plant life, animal life, all of it. There becomes an exponential, exciting, divine shift that occurs where a world of peace and love could maybe exist.
Yes.
But
we're going to have you back, Reverend Barbara. Thanks for being on today. I told Robert I'd get you out on time here so that you can go in your other studio.
Do my show.
Yes. So wonderful programs from Reverend Barbara today at 3 Eastern. Plug your show.
Every Friday, 3:00 Eastern Time, The Joy Show. It's about honoring the idea that there is just one you. And celebrate it, be you, because, hey, everybody else is taken.
Okay. Reverend Barbara Schreiner-Trudel, thank you so very much for being on the program today. We'll have you back because I have still a ton of questions. All right.
Anytime, Michael, anytime.
Oh, thank you so very much. All right, time for us to go, or Robert's going to yell at me at the Monday meeting. Okay, so if you'd like more information about us, go to ntmedia.org. And again, if you could, please leave a generous donation on the donate page. The reason we're able to have these kind of conversations is because of you, that we're having these extremely truthful conversations and saying that, again, that we are all one and that we have a part to play in the healing of it. So again, ntmedia.org/donate. All right, time for us to go. We will see you next week. On behalf of all of us here at the New Thought Media Network, I am Reverend Michael, and I'm going to wish you a wonderful week.
Thanks for joining us this evening for Friday's Fireside Chat with Pastor Michael Mangus. Join us again next week at 8 Eastern, 6 Mountain for more spiritual conversations for today. For more information and replays of past shows, please visit the New Thought Radio and Media Network's Facebook page. Until next week, may God bless you richly and abundantly.